I've mentioned quite a few times before that I have some concerns about the economy, the potential for the Great Depression 2.0. And I'm saying that just based on the fundamentals. We've got record consumer debt, record corporate debt, record government debt. Just the government debt alone is enough that should be sobering. And then throw in there inflation and stock market being greatly overvalued, housing being overvalued. There's some potential for some serious things to happen. Not saying they will, but let's just say I'm concerned. All right, but everything just keeps going right on along with the economy. The numbers are great. Stock market keeps going up, inflation's coming down, unemployment's low. And I was starting to wonder, am I just being paranoid here? All right. The problem is the numbers are great, but everything sure doesn't feel great. And it hadn't felt great for a really long time. So then I started thinking, okay, what's other metrics that I can look at just to give me an idea, a basic idea of how things are going. And there is one metric, as horrible as this one is, suicide rates, that it will give you an idea as to how things are going. I mean, I think we can all agree. Suicide rates going up, that's bad, really bad. Suicide rates going down, hey, that's great. And I've known for a long time that there is a correlation between suicide rate and economy. And there are a lot of other factors that go into it too. It's not just economy, but there is correlation. Anyway, I looked at suicide rates, and I can say without a doubt, everything's not okay right now, at least for an awful lot of people. The highest suicide rate ever recorded here in the U.S. was in 1932 at the height of the Great Depression. Now, thankfully, we're not near that. But right now, where we were at in 2022 was the same as 1941, the last year of the Great Depression. Okay, so the highest suicide rate in 84 years since the Great Depression. That's not good, and that's 2022. And this wasn't just a post-lockdown thing. Okay, the suicide rates have been trending up since 2000, and they've gone up 30% since 2000, and the suicide rate was pretty much the same for 2023 and 2024, and 2025 is not starting off good. Okay, so this is something that's been building for a long time, and I think we can all agree it's not good. Okay, well, I started thinking about that, and again, that is complicated with suicides because there are so many factors. But one thing that did occur to me is over all of this time, since 1941 to now, despite all of the technological achievements and advances, and there were many, life-altering things, indoor plumbing for almost every house, and electricity, and yeah, they had some of that in 1941, but there was a lot that didn't. Now almost all of us do. Then throw in their personal computers and rockets and landing on the moon, jet aircraft, all of the digital revolution and communication technology. Okay, so some serious life-changing things. But despite all of that, we're still the same fragile people that lived in 1941. We're still the same fragile people that have been here for thousands of years. Again, our suicide rate matches theirs. Okay, so we haven't changed. So I started thinking, okay, well, what's a different way I can think about this? And it occurred to me, I've been thinking about this all wrong. All right, I was looking at economic data, but economic data is about things. All right, so unemployment, even suicide rates. All that is just how fewer people are in this world because of suicides. It doesn't tell us anything about the people. And then as I was thinking, okay, well, just trying to figure out what's going on here. Something popped into my head that I haven't thought about in a long time, and I can't tell you where this came from other than maybe just thinking about suicides and then associating that with death. But the 7 deadly sins. Okay, and then I went back and looked at those. Again, I hadn't thought about those in years, but okay, that was sent a chill down my spine when I did that. And I don't care if you believe in God, sin, or anything else. You should at least be curious as to why they called them the 7 deadly sins. All right, and that's because they can absolutely destroy us. All right, and those are the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, wrath, lust, envy, gluttony, and sloth. Okay, and then as soon as I read that, it really got me. Okay, we have turned those into commodities now. I mean, seriously, think about that. Pride. Go buy your Pride merchandise here. We've got it on sale. Greed. But how many entrepreneurs now just celebrate greed? Gordon Gekko and Wall Street. Greed is good. No, it's not. That's sin. Okay, and then let's say wrath. How many people are in prison because of that one? And then that's in our music. Look at some of the heavy metal stuff, gangster rap, that's not good. Lust. With the OnlyFans sites now and porn and everything else. Envy. Instagram and so many other social media sites with just people on there. Hey, look at how rich I am and how fabulous my life is. And don't you wish you could be like me? Yeah. Gluttony. Okay, I'm guilty of that one. And then I think this might be the worst one of all. Sloth. And I used to think sloth meant laziness. But I was researching this, and someone wrote something I just thought was really interesting. Sloth is not laziness. Sloth is avoiding responsibility, both spiritually and mentally. Okay, tell me that just didn't describe a lot of people in our society now, including myself. Avoiding responsibility. And on the spiritual side, we have to spend time thinking about some of this stuff as far as right and wrong, good and evil. Okay, so there's a lot to that one. And then how many people not working now that could, not supporting their families, avoiding a responsibility. Okay, and sloth ties in that responsibility part. That also ties into all of the other sins and that spiritual part and putting in the work. And okay, well, that's part of why we realize, hey, we should avoid these. And we really should. There's a reason they're the deadly sins. We should be as afraid of those sins as we are fentanyl and heroin. They've destroyed way more lives than fentanyl and heroin, and look at all the lives that has destroyed. But again, we don't fear those anymore. We turned them into commodities. My thinking is this probably is not going to end well, and I'm thinking, and hey, we'll find out soon enough, but something Dave Collins said that I thought was really good. I've mentioned him before. I really like his insight on things as far as the economy. A correction in the market, stock market, is a correction in attitude. Okay, that's what the Great Depression was, the crash in '29. Everybody was just throwing money into the stock market, and everybody's getting rich and making money, and it's just going up and up and up, and there's no end to this, and it was a giant bubble. Well, then that speculative bubble burst like all of them do. Great Depression. Okay, that corrected attitudes. That changed how people spent their money, that changed how people lived, that changed how people invested their money, how they thought. Okay, that's a correction. The stock market crashing one day and then coming back 2 days later, people buying the dip, that's not a correction. All right, and we're overdue for a correction. Have been for a long time. Okay, and we can take this a step further, and not just attitudes, but what leads to the attitudes that the market ends up having to correct for. All right, why are people just throwing money in the stock market? Well, sloth is one of them. Responsibility is understanding what you're doing when you're investing in the stock market. We have a responsibility to understand what we're doing. When we buy stocks, we're buying part ownership in a company. Okay, well, there should be a responsibility that goes along with that, like making sure you're buying part of a good company. I'm proud of this company. This is something I would want to own a piece of. Okay, well, what are the revenues of that company? Why would I want to buy a piece of ownership in a company that isn't making very much money compared to what I paid for it? All right, so we need to do that due diligence. Otherwise, we're just throwing money at it to make money without even caring what we're buying. Sound familiar as far as stock market, day trading and all that? Okay, well, the only reason we're doing that is greed. All right, so anyway, corrections in the economy, crashes, that type thing. It's correction in attitudes, but I think more than anything, it's a correction in morals. All right, so if that's the case, then we're really setting up ourselves right now for a huge correction. And just on a little side note, something that I thought was especially interesting when I was looking at the suicide data. There was another time when the suicide rate just kept going up, just like it between 2000 and 2022, or 2025 now, still going. And that's 1920. The suicide rate in 1920, suicide rate didn't just go through the roof when the Great Depression hit. It was steadily going up throughout the 20s. And then it really went up in the 30s. Okay, well, the Great Depression, it was a correction from the excesses of the 1920s. And the 1920s they're pretty famous for being an immoral time. The roaring 20s, those 7 deadly sins were at work in the 1920s. Okay, so what if an economic correction is a correction in morals? If that's the case, then I don't think I'm being paranoid at all right now with my concerns about the economy. And as to exactly how any of this is going to play out, only the Lord knows. The rest of us will find out soon enough. But I don't think I'm being paranoid. I think I'm on the right path with what I'm trying to do and everything I've said about just be prepared for uncertain times. Be ready to cut your expenses. Be ready to cut your overhead for just living. Be ready to plant a garden and be more self-sufficient. Try to get your debt paid off, under control, that type of stuff. Be ready for hard times. And then, hey, if it doesn't happen, then that's great. We just saved a bunch of money. Okay, now for some channel stuff, real quick. I changed the channel name. This was A Good Life, and I changed it to Building a Good Life, and there were a couple reasons for this. And the first one was just search results for YouTube. A Good Life was just too broad of a term, and it just wouldn't show up. I had a couple friends say, hey, what's your channel name? And they typed in A Good Life in YouTube search, and it didn't come up. There were tons of other things that had A Good Life in it. So hopefully Building a Good Life is unique enough of a name that it'll show up when somebody's actually trying to find it. The second reason is I think Building a Good Life is more descriptive of what I'm actually trying to do here. I don't think a good life just happens. I think it's something we have to build, something we have to work at. and something we have to include the Lord in. All right, so next time, we're probably going to be talking about more suicides, as depressing as that is, but we're going to talk about the suicide of nations. I'm seeing a lot of that going on too. All right, God bless and have a great evening.